Brian Driscoll, welcome to the show. And I understand that something may have just gone down right around the 2 o'clock Eastern mark.
Yeah, so I got my Gap Closer shirt on, got word last night. We felt that this has been trending in a good direction for a while now. I've had Khary Adams in my projected Notre Dame class for a little over a month now, but just got official word last night. Let you guys know our show is going to be a little bit different today. And he just went public at 2 o'clock. Khary Adams has committed to Notre Dame. Guys, this is an absolute big one, Vince. Let's dive into that now.
Yep. So Khary Adams, obviously cornerback out of Maryland, went to Loyola Blakefield High School. He's a consensus 4-star. He picked Notre Dame over the likes of Penn State, Maryland, South Carolina, and Michigan. He's 6'1", 175, the 18th overall commit in the 26 class, the 8th on the defensive side of the ball, and the 3rd defensive back in this group. So, Brian, this is a massive pickup for Notre Dame. It is one that was not scheduled.
No, it wasn't, right.
And here we are with this information.
Last night, he was going to go live at 2.
Yeah, right.
But it wasn't anything he put out publicly. It wasn't anything like that. And I'll just get this out of the way now. I know that there was kind of some thought. I shouldn't know because I don't know if I felt this way, but anyone thinking like, oh, is this kind of taken away from, Joey O'Brien's moment tonight? That has nothing to do with it. We'll talk more about that later. But like, this is just something where it's a good thing that this is going down. This is a big pickup. Notre Dame has been really pushing hard for Khary Adams for a long time. And guys, this is a big one because not only, Vince, is this a big time pickup for Notre Dame, but one of the things about recruiting is it's great to get big time players, but you want to make sure that those big time players are also not going to your teams that you're trying to play. And you're trying to, continue to beat Penn State for titles and Oregon for titles and teams like that. So you get a kid like this, you're not only getting a big impact, but you're making sure he doesn't go to another big time program. And this is a state that Notre Dame has not done well in, guys. They get the occasional player from there, Sam Mustipher, Cam Hart, but it's not a state they do it really well with, even at the private school level. So being able to dip into the state of Maryland for one of their, I think, 2 best players in the state, along with the defensive end that's, a 5-star kid, is huge for Notre Dame. This is a really big one, really, really big one.
Yeah, I could not agree more. I'm really excited about this one. To be perfectly honest with you, Brian, when you called me last night and you told me this was going down, I was like, oh, okay. It's going to be a fun little Friday afternoon, little fun Friday. You never know. So let's kind of get into this. We're going to treat this like we do most commitments, but it doesn't, this is still huge. I'm so excited about this, but
we don't normally interrupt mailbags for
right. That's what I'm saying.
This type of thing, but this is a big enough one where I was like,
yeah, this is a big one. So we are going to follow our normal kind of routine with how we do commitment shows. And so I'm going to kick it to you, Brian, to talk about the backstory on Khary Adams and kind of how this whole thing went down and how it, culminated in this this call to Notre Dame saying, hey, you know what, I'm ready to do this like right now.
Yeah, this is one of those ones. Mike Mickens is a very interesting recruiter because he is not one of those pushy guys. He's not someone who, pushes kids to try to commit. He's not someone that panics. He's not someone that overreacts to early momentum. He's a grinder. He just, look, this is the kid I want, and I'm going to stay on it. And 3 months ago, I'm like, Khary Adams, I didn't really pay a lot of attention to Khary Adams because at the time he was not really a guy that you looked at and thought, okay, this is gonna be a guy Notre Dame's gonna get. This is gonna be a big time pickup and all those type of things. It just wasn't. It wasn't where that one was trending, and there were other schools that were in a much better position with him. But Mike Mickens just stayed on it. You go through the process and started to kind of climb up the rankings, just slowly moving up the list with Khary Adams. And within the last couple months, you started to see things change a little bit in this recruitment. And as I said, Mike Mickens was just kind of slow and steady. And then Khary made a visit to Notre Dame in, I believe it was April. And that is when things really started to change for Notre Dame. So he obviously made his official visit this past weekend. But yes, it was April 3rd. He made a visit to Notre Dame. I wasn't actually paying a lot of attention to it. Like, it was like, oh, this is good. It's a big-time player. But I'll be honest, I didn't think they had a snowball's chance in heck of getting that kid at that time. Coming out of that visit, though, the tone completely changed. And Notre Dame all of a sudden became a really big player for Khary Adams in that recruitment. But Mike Mickens didn't start to push. He didn't overreact. He just stayed on plan. Keep at it, keep at it, keep at it. And then it really started to change in May. And this is why, if you're on the message board, you know that I've started this thing this year where I'll kind of put out a projected class. And it's as close to making predictions as I'm going to make. It's sort of a, here's how I feel about things right now. And I put Khary Adams out there. And honestly, the board ignored it. Like, nobody talked about it because I think they were just kind of like, nah, whatever. And then slowly people started asking me about it. I'm like, guys, I think Notre Dame's a major player here. I think they're a major player here. Penn State and Oregon were the two big players. I don't think Penn State handled his recruitment very well. There's some things that I won't get into in a public format. That's going to be more for the backstory on the message board, just because I don't want to throw that business out there as in a big open setting. But I don't think Penn State handled that recruitment very well. And Notre Dame might have ultimately got him anyway, and I think they would have. But that helped Notre Dame because there was a draw. The draw to Penn State was the family really likes Anthony Poindexter, who coaches the DBs at Penn State. And they also really, it's a close program. And Penn State does really well in the Maryland, Virginia area. But coming out of that visit, I think Penn State started to quickly fade. And Mike Mickens and Notre Dame were right there to take benefit of that. Penn State also said that Penn State worked hard to try to get, they made a calculated risk, and that was to get Joey O'Brien and Khary Adams on that late May first open official visit weekend. The hope was that they could get those kids to commit and then not go on other visits. Didn't work with either player. With Khary Adams, he was adamant. It was a lot like the Jadon Blair recruitment last year from the standpoint of the family had a plan of what they were going to do, and they stuck with that plan for the most part. Coming out of that visit this weekend, felt great about where Notre Dame was. Sean and I have talked about it, and Sean's going to talk more about some of the stuff from the visit. He actually talked to Khary, talked to his coach. But coming out of that visit, the vibes were phenomenal about where it was going to go. But my thing was, Oregon was still, let's see how it goes this weekend when he goes to Oregon. Well, I got word, I think it was Monday. Sean, when did I text you or call you about that? Was it Monday?
This is Monday afternoon.
Okay, and I said, hey, man, I think he's going to cancel the visit to Oregon. That's what my intel was telling me. That meant one thing, and, reached out to it. Now, that didn't mean Oregon was necessarily out, so I had to do some digging because he has been to Oregon. He just didn't go on an official visit to Oregon, but was told, look, he knew where he wants to go, and he wanted the recruiting process to be over. And Khary's not a real flashy, like always tweeting, always wanting to be interviewed. Yeah, look at me type of corner. He's a real, I wouldn't say quiet kid, but just a reserved young man. Sean's talked to him. He's not a guy that just is looking for the spotlight all the time. He wants to go play ball. He wants to go to class. He's a very strong student, all those type of things. And so he just was like, let's do it. And, decided to get it over with a lot sooner. So this was one of those ones where patience was needed. Notre Dame stuck with it. Mike Mickens does what he always does. It's the tortoise and the hare, type of recruitment type of thing that we talk that, for those older folks that remember that fable when we were kids, and he just got it done like he always does. And this is why I called Sean the other day and I said there's another buddy. I said, number one, I got two statements to make to you. Number one, I have no idea how much money Mike Mickens makes. No clue. Honestly, don't know. Number two, I just know it's not enough. Dude deserves a raise. But this also speaks, Sean, to it, and I'll let you talk more about Khary's the backstory, but this also speaks to what we've been saying forever, guys. Players like this have been out there always. Khary Adams is not a unique animal when it comes to the recruiting world. A big-time top 50 recruit. He's ranked in the top 40 by On3, who ranks him number 30. He's also ranked number 36 overall by 247 for now. Who knows where he's going to end up at 247 now that he's committed to Notre Dame. This is a kid that is a big time site or big time pickup. But guys like this have always been out there, Sean. This isn't a kid that they needed to make some academic exception for. He's not a kid whose parents wanted him to go to the flashy school. These kids have always been out there. This staff just goes out there, finds them, and grinds hard to get these kids in the appropriate manner, not during the recruiting visit manner, like some head coaches like to do, but like actually doing it the right way, where it's about building the relationship, building trust, building confidence. And the one thing about Mike Mickens is he's about as genuine of a dude as you're going to find, because he's like, I'm going to be honest with you. And if that means you don't want to come play for me, I'd rather you not come play for me because I was honest with you, rather than me giving you some sort of, spiel to try to convince you here. And then when you get here, it's not what I sold to you. But that's my part of the backstory. I know Sean's going to talk about how impactful this weekend was and how absolutely smart it was that Notre Dame got the people on campus around Khary Adams that they got around him.
Yeah, before we get to this official visit news or backstory, it's just interesting. I remember going back to April. It was huge to get him on campus for that unofficial visit. And you pointed out something, and I want to know if you thought about this, Brian. There was another guy that I think Notre Dame was probably in the hunt for during April that we thought they had a really good chance to get, a better chance to get, that ended up going to Penn State. And I wonder how that impacted Jazeel Hart. A lot of people thought his relationship with Mike Mickens was such that he might end up in the class, and then all of a sudden he picks Penn State. And then all of a sudden, like you said, things start to change after the April visit going into May.
It actually changed. Notre Dame dropped out of Jazeel Hart's sweepstakes for two reasons. One, they liked the kid a lot, but I didn't think they felt he was good enough to add as a third corner in the class, because we'll get to class impact about that. But number two is they dropped out when they realized, hey, we got a legitimate shot at getting Khary Adams. And it basically turned into, we don't need a third corner. We're only going to take a third corner if it's the right kind of high-level player. And as much as they liked a lot about Jazeel, I think there were some questions about his speed that made them say, I don't know if that's the move we want to make right now that Aiden Pouncey's committed. Because remember, that commitment impacted this whole thing too. That changed the game too, getting Aiden Pouncey to commit. You've got Aiden Pouncey in the class. You have Chaz Smith in the class. You've had Chaz on campus a couple times. You feel much more solid about his commitment. I think those things all factored in, but really the final piece to Notre Dame backing out of that and why Jazeel then started trending to Penn State was because Notre Dame was in a good place. And then I think Penn State had a pretty good idea about where things stood, that they were, not that he was going to go to Notre Dame, but that they were in trouble with Khary, with Notre Dame, with Oregon, and then Michigan made a very hard push the last month or so with him as well. They knew that they were fading. Now, their fans didn't know it, and their moderators didn't know it from things that I've been sent. But, Sean, I've been telling you now for about a month that, look, dude, I think they're going to get this kid. And that's partly why they backed off of Jazeel Hart, who they liked a lot. I love trolling Penn State, but if you're a Penn State fan watching this and you're all upset about this, you should be, because Notre Dame's dominating you right now. But Jazeel Hart's a good football player. Like, I don't care what his ranking says. That's a good football player. I know he's a 3-star now, but Sean and I both grade him as a 4-star recruit. That's a good football player. But Jazeel Hart, who's a good football player, is not on the same level as a guy like Khary Adams. He's just not. And if if Notre Dame would have taken Jazeel Hart, I'd have been, okay, great. I like that kid a lot. He's tough. He's smart. He's physical. But I even, in my breakdown that I sent to Jazeel, because he asked me, hey, could you send me, the breakdown that you posted out? I even said in there, like, I got questions about his speed. That's my one big knock on him. But you don't have that question about Khary Adams, as you guys are going to find out when we pop in the film. But that's really where that one went, Sean, is once Notre Dame really felt like, okay, we got Aiden Pouncey in the class, and then also you're doing really well with Khary Adams. That's when Notre Dame felt like, hey, let's put all our chips in the Khary Adams basket, because if we miss, we're good. We're good with where we're at. We love Aiden Pouncey. We love Chaz Smith. But with the trends that they're going, that they would like to have more sort of just more corners that can play together, potentially do more 3-man stuff. Plus Aiden Pouncey's 6'3". He's going to be over 200 pounds. If there's a situation where he can't start at cornerback because of who's starting there, but there's a needed safety, Aiden Pouncey grades out almost as well at safety as he does corner. Yeah. So I think that flexibility adds to that too, Sean. So
that is the first bookmark where the shift started to happen. And then there's a second thing that I thought that we heard early on before Notre Dame started gaining momentum, that might play into something that might happen later on today, possibly, is that we heard that it more than likely, if he goes to one particular school, then another top recruit more than likely might not go to that school.
Yeah.
And like people were saying that.
Yeah.
And
Penn State people were saying that.
Penn State people were saying that.
Because at the time, they didn't think they were going to get Joey O'Brien.
Exactly.
And that's what they were trying to.
And so his official visit, he comes. The relationship with, look, we can't overstate the work that Mike Mickens did with this young man in a short period of time. Like we said, in the month of April, working to get him on campus for the unofficial. He gets on campus for the unofficial. They grab his attention. And not only do they grab his attention, then the official visit. Like I said, I told you this, Trev, you might not be able to really capture this. Vince, I'm sure Vince can capture it. And I told Brian, I haven't seen or felt the energy after an official visit weekend probably since the 90s with the football banquet. And that's when we had to read about it. There was no social media. You had to read about it in the days and weeks to come. And how Notre Dame would just take that football banquet weekend and just flip kids that were committed elsewhere, get all of their top 100 players locked in. And what we're seeing coming off of the energy we're seeing coming off of this official visit weekend is very similar. They were very strategic. Aiden Pouncey wasn't supposed to visit. He was supposed to be on campus this weekend. He comes up to be paired with Joey O'Brien, who was also supposed to be on campus originally this weekend, and moved up his visit to the 13th because he wanted to make his decision earlier. So all of these things ended up happening, and Notre Dame just played chess. They really played chess, setting everything up, creating the personalities. I think all of the feedback, or one of the things I heard most, was about how all of these personalities instantly got along. And it wasn't just positionally or a certain group. The entire group together, they were commits, recruits, they were just like we were just family. It just felt like we were already a class. And so when you get that type of vibe, kudos to Notre Dame being able to create that, the positional coaches in their conversations with the kids leading up to the official visits to raise the expectations and the excitement and everything and then the way they went out, I think one of the special treats, in my opinion, that made a lot, especially for not Giselle Hart, but Khary Adams' family, because talking to his coach, Coach Rich Holzer, Loyola, Blakefield, and Townsend, I think you kind of get that his mom was going to be an important part of this decision.
Yeah.
From talking to the coach and from the feedback from this weekend, which leads me to how important the time spent at Coach Freeman's home.
Yeah.
And the way the families embrace one another. It wasn't just the chemistry with the players. The families were acting like they were part of the Notre Dame family and connecting. And so when you have that and you see all of the families, Sullivan Garvin's mom, all these families are tweeting, posting on social media, talking about the visit. That's just it's very rare that you get that type of interaction from players and families collectively coming off an official visit weekend. So I talked to Khary after the first day at Saturday morning. He said everything was great. I'm liking it a lot. I said, okay, I'll log back with you, after your visit's done. So when I finally get back to him, he's talking about the energy. He's talking about being with the guys. He's talking about the photo shoot. He's talking about running out the tunnel and being shocked and surprised, and they're standing there not knowing what's going on. And then when it finally happens, how, it leads to a midfield conversation with Marcus Freeman. And he's talking to all of them, talking about you guys are ready to be getting ready to be part of something special. And it's like all of this at one moment, that moment for a lot of these young men kind of sealed the deal. Like, you know what? This is it. This is where I want to be. And I'm looking forward to talking to Khary a little bit more later on today to find out when the actual decision was made. because if you go back, he gets home on Monday. They have workouts Monday morning. So he rushes back after he leaves the official visit. Coach Holzer said, I told him he didn't have to come to practice, but he showed up to an early workout at 6 a.m. in the morning. He's there. He said, look, he's a humble kid. He's a quiet kid. He's a leader. We talked about the visit during the workouts. Then we had practice that afternoon. He was still talking to me about the official visit. And he literally said, this is Coach Holzer. He talked about that visit more than he's talked about any other visit because he's normally a quiet kid. And then that's when Coach Holzer confirmed that Monday night, some of the rumblings you had heard, Brian, he confirmed to me that, yes, the mom says she's done. It's time to make a decision. She doesn't want to go out to Oregon. And that was kind of like when you started to really feel like, okay, yeah, Notre Dame is probably going to get this kid. Because like I said, you know, talking to Coach Holzer and the vibes coming off that weekend, his mother was definitely a prominent part. He had a lot of respect for the Maryland coaching staff, and they built a great relationship.
That's why they made that visit this week.
They made that visit and honored that visit and gave them a last shot. But I think even before he went to Maryland, the decision had been made. Yeah, the decision had been made. So,
and he had another visit to make because he had canceled the Oregon visit. So,
and let's not look without even having to point the finger out west. I want to stay in South Bend and just say, look, a weekend like this, as a staff and a program, is coming on the heels of what some people might call a somewhat topsy-turvy offseason from an administrative and recruiting standpoint. And it made it really tough to get off to the start. And they got in late on certain kids because of the turnover.
Yeah. And they're going to lose some kids because of that.
And they'll lose some kids before. But for them to recover the way they have recovered as a staff, administration, assistants, analysts, everybody.
Now, what's interesting, Sean, is this is one that Mike Mickens has been on for a while.
Absolutely.
That's why Khary didn't fall through the cracks, because that was one Mike Mickens was on for a minute. And I think when the transition was made, this is a kid that Mike Mickens turned the heat up a little bit on, as far as like, let's make a bigger priority. So I want to point to something you talked about. Well, and it also doesn't help that you're coming off of a 14-2 season. You guys want to know what impact does a season like that have? You're seeing it. It's not a coincidence. Not that look, Notre Dame would be recruiting very well right now. If they'd have gone 10-3 again, they wouldn't be recruiting, because they recruited well after a 9-4 season, and they recruited well after a 10-3 season before, because Marcus Freeman's teams are always going to recruit well. This is a different level right now, in my opinion. And we got to see how they finish, but this is a different level across the board. And it's all the things we've talked about, but it's also the fact that they're now selling, hey, nobody can say to you, you can't win there. Like, no, you can't say that to a recruit. You can't. Texas can't say it. There's only one staff that says Notre Dame can't win championship. There's only one that can say that right now, and that's Ohio State. That's it. And Georgia can't say that anymore. Penn State can't say that anymore. Bama can't say that anymore. Y'all lost to Vanderbilt. I mean, like, that's the thing. That's why this season was so important. I also think it's really important to talk about, Sean. Let's give a huge shout out to the parents of the Notre Dame commits, not only in this class, but there's also a couple parents in the current freshman class that are still very involved in recruiting, talking to parents, letting them know how their journey was, what their process was like. It was also smart for Notre Dame to get Jadon Blair and Khary Adams around, Joey O'Brien and Khary Adams around some of those players, getting them around Jadon Blair and around Leonard Moore and around Dallas Golden and those type of guys who's on campus now. The connection was very important in this recruitment. The fact that's what got mom more comfortable. I'll tell you right now, Grayson McHugh's mom did not want him to come to Notre Dame a week ago today. Did not. And that's why there was some confusion about what he was ultimately going to do. He wanted Notre Dame. Mom did not. The way the offensive line moms interacted with her is, and the way she watched her son interact with the other Notre Dame commits, is what ultimately said, hey, this is what you want to do. I support you. I think there was, not that Khary Adams' mom wasn't pro Notre Dame. She was, but like most mothers, like my mother was, well, I want you to do what's best for you, but I'd prefer you do what's best for you much closer to home. That's kind of where it was, right? I think her getting out and getting another chance to see Notre Dame and getting to sit down and be at Marcus Freeman's home, getting to meet his wife, getting to meet his kids, getting to meet all the other moms played a big role in this. And that's what Marcus Freeman's selling. It's not just about football, but now that the football piece is so good, it makes selling all the other stuff so much easier. And that's why you're seeing the success they're having, because guys, let's be honest about this. This doesn't happen 3-4 years ago, this type of kid. Now, Benjamin Morrison was an elite player too, but he was a flew under the radar kind of kid. You know, Bama found him, Notre Dame found him, Washington found him, but a lot of big time schools weren't all Benjamin Morrison, except the really great DB evaluators, aka Mike Mickens, Nick Saban, and Jimmy Lake, right? Like when they were all in college football, those are three of the absolute best evaluators and developers of DBs. That's why they were the only big time programs really pushing for Benjamin Morrison. This is a different deal. This is a kid that everybody wanted. And Mike Mickens did not get intimidated by that. He did not be like, well, we got no shot with that kid. We're too far behind. No, he just kept at it. Because at the end of the day, here's what Mike Mickens knew. And I'll share a story with you guys. I was talking to somebody, and it was during Christian Gray's recruitment. And I was having lunch with somebody. And at the time, it was when Christian Gray was considered fading from Notre Dame, and it was LSU and Ohio State and, DBU battle and all that stuff. And I asked this guy that I was talking to, I said, what do you think that Notre Dame is going to do? And he was like, nothing. I'm like, what do you mean nothing? He's like, Mickens isn't going to change anything. And I said, why? He said, because Mickens knows he's a Notre Dame kid, and he's just going to let him enjoy this particular moment. And then he's going to remind him he's a Notre Dame kid. That's what worked for Khary Adams. Mickens knew at the end of the day, it's going to click with this kid. You're a Notre Dame kid. Just like he felt that way about Aiden Pouncey when me and a lot of other people didn't think Aiden Pouncey was going to end up at Notre Dame. It's crazy because 2 of the 3 commits in this class are kids that if you'd have asked me 4 months ago, does Notre Dame have a shot at these kids? I'd have said, no. It'd be nice. It'd be great to have them. They're studs. But Notre Dame's not going to get those kids. And here we are sitting here on June 20th, and they're both in the class.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because I wrote down to make sure that I point out his recruitment is very similar to Christian Gray. Very similar from talking to both of those kids. I just want to give you something that Rich Holzer said to kind of close it up. He said he's a humble, quiet kid. He's a great leader for us, and he's great in the classroom. He's not impressed by the flash of all of the recruiting stuff, and this is a long-term decision for him and his family. When Coach Holzer told me that Monday evening, I was like, oh, he's coming to Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Like, that's coming off of what the family had shared with him. So for me, that's when I felt like, yeah, they're going to get this kid. And knowing that the Oregon trip is going to be canceled and just seeing him go out of respect just tells you a lot about that family and about him and the integrity they operate with, that they, kind of honored the relationship that Maryland had built with him for a long time and went up there for that last visit before ultimately making a decision. So great get by Mike Mickens and great get by the staff. Go ahead.
Last thing before Vince takes us to the next section. I think that Maryland visit was also helpful too, because it's nice to get somewhere else and to hear other coaches and kind of hear a spiel about somebody else, so you can kind of try your best to take the emotion out of the Notre Dame visit as much as you could out of the conversation.
Yeah.
And then get back to, okay, is this really what I want to do? The emotion of the amazing weekend is gone. You went to Maryland. We talked to this. Oregon's trying to talk to us to get us to visit all these different things. Okay, what is ultimately what I want to do based on the factors that have always mattered? And it just another one from this past weekend. It's going to be a fun ride.
Just another domino, right? We were talking about that when we were talking about McHugh earlier this week, and he was the first domino. Khary Adams is the second domino. We'll see how many dominoes fall from this weekend after this afternoon. But one thing we like to talk about, obviously, we got the backstory. We know how this all happened and how he's going to end up matriculating over to Notre Dame. But what is the class impact? How does he impact this class? He's the 18th overall. He is the 8th on defense, and he's the 3rd defensive back in the 2026 class. So, Brian, I'll let you kick this thing off. How does he impact this class?
Well, there's two ways that a recruit impacts a class, right? One is, do you meet the numbers need? The two is, are you adding impact talent? Well, once Aiden Pouncey committed, there was no need to recruit another cornerback for numbers. You were only going to recruit another cornerback because you felt the guy could be a difference maker, and that's ultimately what the deal here is. Also, I mean, you do have to look at it when this class arrives. They will be in their one and only year with Leonard Moore, most likely, and they're likely last year with Christian Gray. So there's going to be after 2026, most likely, so as long as there's no injuries, you're going to have a very key exodus of two starting cornerbacks. The one thing that's helped Notre Dame in recent years is they've never had two corners leave in the same year. I mean, even Julian Love and Troy Pride were a year apart. And then you look at, obviously Cam Hart and Benjamin Morrison were a year apart. And obviously this past year, Benjamin Morrison and Christian Gray and Leonard Moore are likely going to be 2 years apart at best. If, at worst, let's say Christian Gray has a monster season and decides to go pro, you're still a year apart. But unless Christian Gray has that monster season this year and goes pro, which, I mean, honestly, I hope happens, because if Christian Gray is good enough to be a first-round draft pick, maybe early second-round draft pick, that means he had a monster year, means Notre Dame's really flipping good, then you could maybe have that. But I think as of right now, it's most likely that those two are going to leave at the same time. So going into the sophomore year of this class, there is going to be a need there. So I think that said, okay, we don't have to be afraid of numbers, because sometimes you got to make sure you're not bringing in too many guys in a class. And so that was an interesting part, but it basically just came down to this, guys, is number one, Khary Adams is too good not to take. And so what he adds to the class, Vince, is an impact player. That's a perfect fit for what Mike Mickens looks for. He's long, he's rangy, he's fast, he's athletic. He's not just fast, but he's also athletic. Very quick feet. Trev, you and I were talking about it. You mentioned to me his ability to just plant and drive on the football is exceptional. You guys will see that on film. Part of that's quickness, part of that's length. He's a smart football player. He's not very technically sound, which you'll see on film, because he's a two-way player, and his high school coaches should be doing exactly what they're doing right now, which is letting him play both sides of the ball. It'll be up to Mike Mickens to teach him all those finer points that some guys get who are just one-way players, or like in Benjamin Morrison's case, have a father who played defensive back in the National Football League. You're going to be a little bit more advanced, just like Joe Alt was when he got to Notre Dame, because his dad was a Kansas City Chiefs Hall of Fame player. So the talent was just too good to pass up. The fit was too good to pass up, Vince. What is Mike Mickens like? Length, check. Highly athletic, check. Speed, check. He loves two-way players, check. He loves competitive kids, check. Sean's example of the 6 a.m. after he gets off his visit, he's at the school working out. That's the kind of thing that I would expect. I'd be like, oh yeah, that makes sense that Leonard Moore did that. Oh yeah, it makes sense that Benjamin Morrison did that. Like those are the kind of kids that Mike Mickens likes. He checks that box. And then also, as Notre Dame transitions to more of a, likely they're going to still be a heavy man team, but maybe a team that mixes it up. You want to make sure you have guys that can be versatile and the coverages they can thrive in. And Khary Adams' skill set is one where I think he could be an elite cover corner and man. And I think he also, with that range, that athleticism, he can also be a high-level guy in zone coverage as well. But he checks all those boxes, Vince, and that's the need he fit. Impact player, perfect fit for the system, perfect mentality and mindset for the room. Guys, Khary Adams, if he's smart enough to get into Notre Dame, he's smart enough to know what's signed in the last 2 years. And he's smart enough to know what's already in the class. And it just said, he didn't care. I'm going to go compete, because it's not just about finding the easiest path. Notre Dame offers me a lot of other things beyond just football. But Mike Mickens has also shown, if I have more than two corners that can play, I'd rather play more than two corners at a time. And, and so that was kind of the pitch. So talk about class impact, guys. That matters. But the other part, too, is we talk a lot about perception in recruiting. Trev, we talk a lot about perception. And when you can add a top 50 recruit, which is what this young man is, that's going to kind of alert people and other recruits. You don't think Elijah Golden knows about what just happened when he's on his visit right now to Notre Dame? You don't think other players are saying, like, dude, Notre Dame ain't playing around. They just beat Oregon for a kid. They just beat Penn State for a kid that everybody thought was going to go to Penn State. Trev, we talk about it. Perception matters. When you land a top 50 corner, that sends a message to college football and to other recruits.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, you go and look at some of the barriers and some of the stereotypes that Notre Dame has just been absolutely decimating in the last 6 months. And you go back and think about, well, Notre Dame can't compete with the SEC. They can't run with the SEC. Look what they did in the Sugar Bowl. Well, Notre Dame can't make a run to the title. Like they're just, Penn State plays in the Big Ten and they have experience against Ohio State and Michigan every year. They just played Oregon and Notre Dame knocks that barrier down. Started to see a little bit of shades of it, I won't lie, in the first half of the national championship games. Oh, this game's over. Notre Dame's not coming back. And then slowly but surely they climb back into the game for a multitude of different reasons. But fact of the matter is they did. Now, you go and you think about what has happened so far this offseason. There's been coaching staffs before at Notre Dame that kind of just catch fire. Like it's maybe just all the right ingredients at the right time. Somebody departs to take another opportunity and they take a step back. But then you go and you look at, okay, gosh, you lose a guy like Dylan McCullough. How do you go replace him? You go get Juwan Sider. Well, now it's the recruiting barrier. Like all of these things that you can use for anti-recruiting tactics against Notre Dame, those are starting to fall. You can't compete for a national championship anymore. You can't use, they don't have that style of play, though they don't recruit that style of player anymore.
And now you can't even say NFL anymore.
Exactly. Yeah. You can't use the NFL anymore. You can't use player development anymore for all the players that have taken massive steps in Coach Freeman's tenure. And now you can't even say, look, blue chips guys just don't go to Notre Dame. They get the hidden 3-star gems that will break out in their junior season. Ben Morrison didn't listen to that. Leonard Moore didn't listen to that. I mean, even on the offensive side of the ball, Anthony Knapp stepped in and started at left tackle at the University of Notre Dame for 15 games. Can't use that anymore either. They're going with a young guy at quarterback this upcoming season. So all of these ingredients are starting to come together, and it's knocking down all these barriers. And I got to say, the ride has been absolutely awesome to watch happen. Been ups and downs, but it's, if you tell me that I had experienced some of the downs in the last 6 months to get to this moment right here in the offseason and the state of Notre Dame's program where it's at, I would have taken them for sure.
I think the class impact for me is that you start to get kids like Khary Adams. You start to get kids like Aiden Pouncey. And you forget about a kid like Chaston Smith, who's a really good football player. And I think that is the type of roster that Marcus Freeman is starting to build, that I really think they weren't able to get, like Brian had mentioned, these type of kids are Notre Dame kids. They do have interest in coming to a Notre Dame program if you will recruit them and show them that they are Notre Dame kids. But when you start to get those kids, like any other roster, you forget about the kids that might not be as ballyhooed, coming into the class. And I think that's what you're going to start to see, not just in the defensive back room. I think you're going to start on the defensive line. I think you see that in other areas where we've been waiting for Notre Dame to turn the corner, per se, in recruiting. And so we said we're just 3 seasons or 3 cycles away from Notre Dame's defensive back room being a question from a recruiting standpoint. And now I don't think any of us have a question when it comes to roster talent and recruiting when it comes to Mike Mickens in the defensive back. So that's how quickly the narrative can change when you do things right, or as a good salesman always says, you can't be a good salesman unless you believe in the product. And Marcus Freeman really believes, he's authentic with it. He believes that Notre Dame is going in college football. That's what he believes. And that's what he portrays, exudes from him. And so the authenticity is what you get on the recruiting trail, not just from Marcus Freeman, but from the entire staff. And I think we're starting to see some of the benefactors of that. And to be honest, you go back, that Orange Bowl, who knows? A kid like Khary Adams sitting there watching the Orange Bowl, seeing the Penn State wide receivers come away with 0 receptions.
And then Notre Dame's guys are torching the Penn State.
If that game was the inverse had happened, who knows? This kid might have ended up at Penn State.
It could not have gone better for Notre Dame in the battle of for DBs with Penn State.
Absolutely.
Could not have gone better. Absolutely. I wanted to say this last thing, Vince, before we go into the next section, which I know is your favorite portion of the show. But I'm something I'm going to look into, Sean. And if you talk to the people that you know that are close to him, I'm very curious to know what impact the fact that they already have Ebenezer Iwatade, Rodney Dunham, and Tiki Hole in the class had on a kid like Khary Adams. Knowing that, dude, they just landed 2 5-star DNs. On 3 has them as 5 stars anyway. Did that matter? But that's the whole point, is we can have this conversation because Notre Dame just went and landed some stud D linemen, and now they're adding more stud DBs to the mix, and that's how you build that kind of elite defense. It's like, look, we got to be great coachers and great developers. I was having this debate with someone on Twitter the other day, and I think the guy was very misguided, but it was a polite conversation. But he was talking about how, Notre Dame takes really good players and turns into elite. And I said, no, I think that's where you're wrong. I think people have been underselling Notre Dame's recruiting the last couple of years. And Sean and I have been pounding the table. Vince and I have been pounding the table that, guys, you don't understand. They're bringing in way better players than you think they are. Everybody said, well, hopefully Mike Mickens can work magic with Benjamin Morrison. And I'm sitting there the whole time saying, he doesn't need to. This kid's really flipping good. It's just don't ruin him. You're getting elite talent, and then great coaches are making sure they play to their elite potential. And that's just another example of this. So it's a big one.
Absolutely right. And you are also absolutely right about the fact that this next portion is my favorite portion of any recruiting show that I am a part of. And it is the film breakdown. And this is where anybody that's ever been a coach loves to watch film. And it's one of my favorite things to do. And so we're going to throw in Khary Adams' junior year film, his highlights, and we're just going to kind of break it down as we see it, as we go through it. I'm fired up for this part, Brian.
Couple things I love it too, Vince. A couple things you're going to see. Number one is he plays both sides of the ball, so just prepare for that. His team is in blue and white helmets, but this is a very talented. It's blue and white helmets. Start having a second thought. They play a challenging schedule. Here he's playing wide receiver. Oh. First thing you see, guys, long and fast. Like, takes one clip. And he's already like putting the finger up, like, I'm scoring. And he plays with a lot of energy that you would not expect from him when you get to know him and talking to people around him. He plays with some fire. But you see that length. He's got easy speed. He's a kid that he gets to top speed quickly. I think he's run like a 10.6 something in the 40 meter and the 40 meter dash. That would be bad. In the 100 meter dash,
not be good.
He ain't coming to Notre Dame. But you see the speed, but he gets his top speed in a hurry. He's got really good acceleration. It's easy speed. Like, look at that. It's real easy speed. And I honestly don't think Khary plays at full speed as much as I'd like him to. So I think there's another level of gear there for him. But also the long speed is outstanding, Trev. This is one of many examples you'll see on film where he's the plant and drive. His footwork isn't even good here. That's the crazy thing. It's just not even great footwork. But look how quickly he goes from basically just standing there to planting his feet and driving downhill and then closing on it and then makes the interception on the play. So
it shows good instincts, obviously. Yeah. I mean, he knows where the ball is going to go. He's watching the quarterback's eyes. Those are all good things. Yeah. His technique isn't fantastic, but that's why you have Mike Mickens.
Like this play, he's not even running hard.
Right.
Like he's almost jogging and just runs right past this kid. That's something that I do want to see more of Khary. That's why I don't have Khary as a 5-star player yet. Is there some technical things? I almost think he's not challenged in high school. Plays in a good area, but is there anybody that's really like as good as him, like naturally as good as him? I don't know. He plays at a different gear in some of the bigger games. That's part of the things he'll have to learn. But goodness, the talent is really there, and you can see it. Easy strider. Physically, Sean, doesn't he remind you a lot of Cam Hart? Like as far as 6'2", skinny, but a nice frame. And then Cam ended up being 207, and I can see Khary Adams growing to 202 because right now his size, like his not size like height and length, but his body size, his girth, I should say, is not where you want it to be. Leonard Moore's wasn't as a junior either. He filled out. I think Khary's got one of those Leonard Moore, Cam Hart type of frames where he's going to be 200 pounds when it's all said and done. He plays physical and he's a willing tackler, but he's just not strong yet. He's got to get stronger. Once that comes, look out, fellas, because the natural God-given ability, the instincts, the football IQ, you talked about it, the work ethic, that's all there. But you guys will see, like, the technique is not super great right now. Go ahead, Sean.
Yeah. No, I was just going to, you said he ran a 10.6. He also ran a 10.3 split in the 4x1 of the relay. He had a 10.3 split in that same pin relay. So, and talking to him, I remember sharing with Brian, I talked to him after that and I was congratulating him, said, man, I see you went out there and took care of business this weekend. He was like, I was all right. So that just shows you his mindset.
And not in a false humility way, too, Sean.
No.
I remember you telling me that. It wasn't. You said it wasn't like a fake, like, it's all right. It was like, I thought I could have done better. Look at this transition right here, real quick, Sean. This is what I like, though. This is what I'm talking about. Look how quickly, guys. This is not a textbook teach tape footwork. This is not good technical footwork. But look how quickly he opens and runs and gets on that kid. I like the fact, Trev, he has a really good feel of playing the receiver as well.
Yep.
He understands proper leverage. He kind of plays inside out on corners. He doesn't get too high. He stays right in phase real well. Very good feel, and that's why I think I love the man coverage potential of him, and you see it on this film, Trev.
Yeah, absolutely. Great feel for the game, and that it goes to show. I mean, he's flat-footed at the top of a lot of his coverages. But, man, when he makes the decision to go and plants, flies upfield. Great vertical speed. But similar to how we talked about Grayson McHugh when he committed earlier this week, is, you kind of think that maybe his experience as a defensive end helps him out at tackle. Whereas same with Khary Adams, his feel for the game as a wide receiver, I have to imagine helps him play leverage, knows when to attack which shoulder as a corner.
Doesn't fall for double moves. He shows patience, all that.
Actually, I think right here he has a feel for double moves.
Look at that. This is great. He doesn't bite on the route. They're trying to get him on an out and up. He stays in phase. If he jumps on this and overreacts and doesn't, he's going to jump on this and he's toast, but he stays in phase. And look at the easy speed too, guys. Just that's such an impressive play.
Yeah. No, I really like this film. The first couple of clips on his film that he's in press, I also like too, because you can see the tools that Mike Mickens is going to have to work with. Not a finished product by any means, but you see the tools.
Well, I see his instincts in zone, to be perfectly honest with you, where he, one of the principles of zone is it's kind of like man, as long as somebody's in your zone and then you peel off and you go to somebody else, like you can tell his instinct to come off of one guy, come on to another, because that's where the ball is headed. I think he does a really, really good job of that. And again, his footwork's not great, but his instincts are good. You can clean up footwork because he's shown that he can do it. He can do the footwork. He is smooth, but that's why he's gotten away with being able to do what he's doing, because of his instincts and his athletic ability.
And a lot of two-way players aren't super great technicians.
Because they're not focused on one particular side of the ball. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And it's just when you're devoting time to both sides, it's not like in college where you're going to practice every day and you're focused on one thing. You spend half your practice working on offense, half your practice on working on defense. If you're a high school coach, I just got to teach the kid basics technically, make sure he knows the plays.
Correct.
That's the more important thing.
100%.
And so the coaches have a choice. I can either keep them on defense and just teach them the finer points of the game, or play them both ways. Well, the job of his high school football coaches is to go out and win football games for their high school. And I actually think it's a good thing to let these kids play both ways. Joey O'Brien, who's going to make a decision later tonight, plays both ways. Aiden Pouncey plays both ways. And the reason I think that's so, Christian Gray played both ways. Leonard Moore played both ways. The reason I think that's good is because if your DB coach is worth a darn, he can teach you the technique in an off season, especially if you're an early enrollee. Leonard Moore wasn't even an early enrollee, and Mike Mickens got him ready to go. Because if the talent is there, getting the footwork down, that's part of it. That's kind of what Mike Mickens gets paid to do. But you learn so many valuable lessons by being a two-way player. Mm-hmm. And you see that. I think that's a great point, Vince, is that playing receiver, he knows some of the tells. He knows what a receiver is trying to do to him. He's trying to do it himself. Yep. And I think that allows him to play as a really smart football player. So Dallas Golden's another one. Yes, Michael. Dallas Golden's another. Mark Zachary was a two-way player. So not everybody. Khary Thomas didn't play a lot both ways. I don't think that Benjamin Morrison played a whole lot of offense in high school, from what I remember. Jaden Mickey, I don't remember playing a whole lot off. I mean, not everybody's a two-way player, but a lot of them are.
But if you've got an elite athlete,
that,
if you've got an elite athlete, they're probably going to go both ways, unless you're
like Khary Thomas didn't go both ways because he had Dalen Sharper, who committed to Stanford, and then Devin Fitzgerald, who's going to decide
Right.
between like Notre Dame, Clemson, and Stanford at some point in time soon, right?
Yeah,
So
that's an
there wasn't
embarrassment
the
of
need
riches.
there.
Yeah,
Right,
exactly.
right. Where Joey O'Brien's the best receiver on his high school team. Dallas Golden was the best receiver on his high school team and best running back and best cornerback.
Right,
Probably was the best
exactly.
quarterback. You know, I mean, you look at Mark Zachary, he was their best receiver coming out. I mean, that was needed. Cree Thomas didn't need to be because they had Devin
Correct.
Fitzgerald and Dalen Sharper. So that's part of it too. Some schools don't have that need. You don't need to play both ways at IMG. You don't need to play both ways at St. Joseph and Philly. But at Loyola Blakefield, they needed him to play both ways. And so that's why when I say he's not technically sound, that's not a shot at coaches.
No.
It's just like for some kids, it's like it's just kind of the way they are. Like
they just need him to go out and be an athlete.
I talked about Rob Larson and how well the coaches at Folsom teach their receivers. Well, Rico Flores wasn't a two-way player. He just only played receiver. Rob Larson's a one-way player. He only plays receiver. So it's easier for that coach who, I don't know who he is, but he does a phenomenal job because it's not an accident. Every kid that comes out of Folsom's a great route runner. It's not an accident. You know what I'm saying? But like, it's easier as a high school coach when you only have your guys. So I'll give you an example. So when I was in college coaching, all right, and I know some people love it when I tell the stories, but this is a great example. When we would be on a lot of special teams, my receivers weren't on it. So I would take my kids down and we would go work on red zone drills and different catching drills. And we'd work on sideline drills. I'd have them get on a knee and work on catching the ball low and turning. We could do those things because they were only receivers and there's certain special teams that they just weren't on. And if we had a guy or two that was down there, they'd go down there. Well, in high school, at most high schools, when you go to special teams, it's all hands on deck.
Yep.
And your best athletes are down there. So all those things that I'm down here working on that the IMG coach can work on, that the Folsom coach can work on maybe, you don't get to do those at a lot of high schools. You don't get to do that at Penn High School, Vince, because those kids are doing everything. So when it's defense
100%.
time, they're focused on defense. When it's special teams time, they're focused on special teams.
Right.
And that's why I say, yes, Khary has a lot of technical work. That's not a shot. Most kids do coming out of high school. And that's especially as juniors. This is him as a junior, but the tools are there. That's what you look for. I've said when I was recruiting, I didn't give a rip if a kid knew how to run a route. That was my job. That's what I got paid to do. I need to know they had the physical tools to do what I need them to do. And there's not a thing that Khary Adams lacks athletically at a high level to go be an elite cornerback. So that's why he's a top 100 guy for me right now. But it was one of the easiest 5-star upside grades I've given in the cycle.
Yeah, and last year he did play against some pretty good competition. Gonzaga's a big time program out of the DMV area. Archbishop is a team they played out of that area. Then they went up and played Scranton out of PA. So it was a really good team. So he's going up against some pretty good competition. That's one of the things Rich Holzer, his coach, said. He won't have a problem transitioning because of the competition we play to college football. He'll be ready to go. So that's his mindset. Like you said, Ryan, his family, like you said, like Jadon Blair, they have a plan going into recruiting. His mother was kind of the spearhead. They knew how they wanted to go about it. They know the plan that they want in college. They have a plan post-college going into the NFL, business, everything is mapped out, branding, all of that. They're thinking about that, very similar to the way Jadon Blair and his family handled their recruitment.
Sean, this year they played Scranton Prep, to your point. They played Georgetown Prep, it's a good program. They played Gonzaga, who's an annual powerhouse in there. They played Gilman out of Baltimore, where Victor Abiamiri was from, where I think wasn't who's the other guy, the DeJuan Lane that we were talking about when we were doing our Penn State DB breakdown the other day. Trev, you and I, DeJuan Lane was from Gilman. Obviously, Ambrose Wooden was also from Gilman. And Gonzaga is where Caleb Williams played. It's where, what's the kid that went to Stanford? Kevin Hogan, I believe, also played at Gonzaga. That's a big-time program. The two brothers, Kajando brothers from Alabama, are both from Gonzaga as well. They also played St. Mary's, which is a decent program. Mount St. Joseph is a big-time program. Archbishop Spalding has been good and has been really good in the past. They're a really good program. They played Milford Mill Academy, and they played Calvert Hall, who's another big-time program from that area. Archbishop Spalding is a team that went 12-0 this year in Maryland. So their competition, he is not wrong. That's not a coach exaggerating to hype up his kid. Their schedule is legit. I mean, it is absolutely legit. They play all those same teams, their schedule this year is the same. They replace one Milford Mill. Actually, no, they play them. There's one team that they play this year that they didn't play last year. That's it. And so he's going to be tested, and that's also something that, like, that's one thing that Mike Mickens loved about Christian Gray, is that every week we knew Christian was going to get challenged. It was going against Ryan Wingo and Aaron Smith, and I mean, they were going against good players every week. And the kid that's at Oregon, Jalen, they played against Jeremiah Love, but Jeremiah McClellan, he went against him. So that's the thing about Khary, is when you watch him play, he's a standout, but he's a standout against really good competition. And he had 43 tackles last year, 4 interceptions, 12 pass breakups. He's an outstanding talent. Imagine what he's going to be when the technical part comes, and that's going to happen because he chose to play for Mike Mickens. So that's a no-brainer. You've never been like, man, Notre Dame's corners didn't play with good technique today. I mean, that's just for like a game. There's a play here, play there, but man, he's going to get coached up, and it's what gets you excited about it.
So the final part that we like to talk about in our recruiting shows is what's next. What's next at the position, if anything? What's next on defense? What's next in recruiting? Just what's next? And Brian, I'll let you kick it off, and then you can throw it any way you want, any direction you want, either Trevor, Sean, however we want to go here.
Well, the biggest what's next, guys, is, I mean, who's just the next on the list? I mean, tonight at 7:15, Joey O'Brien, who is from the state of Pennsylvania, is going to make a decision. He's going to announce between Notre Dame, Oregon, Penn State, or Clemson. That's been one that's been back and forth in a lot of people's eyes. So that's what's next. I mean, that is literally what's next. And, whatever Joey decides, we'll go live tonight and talk about whatever it is he's going to decide and talk about what that means and then what's next for there. But if they're able to get Joey in the class, then the other guy that they really want is Nick Reddish. Now, Nick Reddish is probably the biggest enigma in the class, because I just don't really have a strong opinion of Nick Reddish because there's not a lot of sophomore film available. I've yet to find any game film of him, which is surprising where he's from. I thought I'd be able to find some more game film, but then he got hurt and missed his entire junior year because of a knee injury. All I know about Nick Reddish is Mike Mickens loves him. And that's kind of like, okay. Mike Mickens has been loving this kid for a year. Through the injury, all of it. Never has shied away from Nick Reddish. And then he's going to announce on July 11th. It's basically down to Notre Dame and Virginia Tech. But that's really what's left in the DB board. The visit with Donovan Webb got canceled this weekend. I think that was kind of a mutual thing. Notre Dame got on him late. They hadn't built a great relationship, and they knew what was happening today. And I think their focus was on, hey, let's try to get Joey and Nick and then call it a day. But what also you're seeing, guys, is Mike Mickens is already turned to a degree to the 2027 class. Getting Khary in the class now, you obviously got to keep recruiting these kids. But with Khary committing today and then Joey committing tonight, you're going to find out what his plans are, and then you're going to know what you need to do accordingly after that, whether it's we got to go after somebody else or, hey, we're kind of good. You've got Nick. Now it's just about closing on Nick Reddish and trying to get him in the class. But the rest of his efforts are now going to be geared towards, okay, 2027, you're up. And let's go try to run this back and do the same thing again next year, which based on recent history, Sean, is pretty much what we expect to happen, so.
Yeah. I spoke to Nick Reddish last night, talking about what's next. Going back to what you said, he missed his entire junior year because of that knee injury. So I knew we had talked previously. I knew he started practice yesterday. So that was his first time back on the field in a long time with his teammates. And he was like, yo, it's just a blessing to be back out here, man. And I think the decision and for it to be July 11th lines up with the beginning of camp. He wants to get his feet under himself and then have the announcement come after the first couple of weeks of practice with his teammates. So I think the decision is kind of already made. It's just about when the date is going to actually take place. So he's trying to focus on, like you said, making sure he's good physically and making sure he can get back to doing what he needs to do for his team. And then once that's done, he feels good. That's why he put the date of July 11th. But, in my opinion, I think the decision is pretty much in it. I can forth on certain things, but like you said, it's down to 2 teams at this point.
I mean, above all else, as far as what's next, I don't really have much else to add. There's going to be some things that unfold from that really high octane recruiting weekend that happened not so long ago. And right now, I know we say a lot on the show, don't ride the highs and the lows of what the recruiting is. But right now, I'm, for lack of better words, just kind of enjoying the ride of what this is. Notre Dame is very quickly changing the narrative of what it means to attract and retain talent at a high level. And Khary Adams is a class-defining type of player that you bring in, and there's potentially more on the way. So I'm excited to watch the rest of this unfold, and I'm ready to rock, man. It's good stuff.
Last thing with Nick Reddish, I was going to say this before my mic went out, but it's an interesting pull for him because I think he really likes Notre Dame a lot. And Notre Dame's been a great place for a long time, but his older brother is a rising sophomore at Virginia Tech. And so there's that pull of that as well, which is what has made this decision more challenging for Nick. But he's a kid. Look, if he commits Notre Dame, our breakdown of him is going to be different because I don't have a strong feeling of him. It's hard. I gave him a 3.5-star grade because of just some of the sophomore film I saw, and that's the best I can do. I almost didn't want to grade him at all, just because there's so little film of him. But like I said, there comes a point in time, guys, where you just certain people say they like a kid and you just give them the benefit of the doubt. And that's the kind of benefit of the doubt that Mike Mickens has earned with me when it comes to DBs like him.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to be negative on the kid because it's not even that I have questions about Nick Reddish. It's literally, there's just not a lot of film to form a really strong opinion, and he didn't play any junior football. And that's really what it boils down to for me. But I'm very excited to see his senior film and see what he can do. But, if Mike Mickens says you can play, then I'm going to assume you can. And then I would just need to, it's like the old Ronald Reagan quote, right? Trust but verify. You know what I mean? Like I trust him, but I got to verify it. And we'll get that opportunity there. But and then just big picture, Vince, it's like what we talked about the other day. It's just keep closing on all the guys that were on campus. Keep closing on Caden Finley, Devin Fitzgerald, and, all the guys talk about. You've got Elijah Golden on campus, and that is 100% of Al Washington's attention the next couple of days is trying to get to get Elijah Golden. So it really just comes down to, what your board is, close on it, finish on it, and that's the key. And the staff is hoping to be pretty much done with recruiting by the time the season starts. I mean, that's with 26 class, that's the goal, and there's a shot that they could. And boy, this class it's really humming, boys. It's really humming.
Yo, that was a really good tab with the Cam Hart connection. Both Maryland kids, Baltimore kids. That was a good comp. Darn good comp.
Yeah, just real similar body types. Cam was real raw. I think Cam was more of a receiver at the time than he was a DB, where Khary is more of a DB than he is a receiver. But if Khary was like, hey, I want to play receiver, would you still recruit him in Notre Dame? I'd be like, yeah. He's got a lot to learn, but yeah, I mean, 6'2", he's fast, he catches the ball well, he's, he can make plays after the catch. Sure, I'd recruit him there. And that's, Cam was that way too, but Joey O'Brien's that way. If Joey O'Brien called the coaches tomorrow and was like, hey, you know what, I want to play receiver, I'd be like, all right, cool, let's do it. So, but yeah, that's why it's not just, it's the Maryland thing, it's the body type, it's the frame. There's just a lot of things. I'll say this, I think Khary's a little bit smoother than Cam was. Cam is a little bit stronger, but I think Khary's a little bit more fluid. His hips are he's just a little cleaner with the transitions, just a little bit more of a natural corner athlete than even Cam was. And Vince is up there like, you shut your mouth, blaspheming Cam Hart like that. Vince is like gonna not want to hang out with me at all like this weekend after saying something even remotely negative about Cam Hart. But Cam was an exceptional player. It's just a slight difference. But man, it's a talented player, and I'd love to get more kids from that area. Part of it's because of they all play each other, so these kids are all like kind of battle tested. That's why Bama goes up there and gets so many kids. Remember Bama got that Terrell Hall kid a few years ago. They ended up having a lot of injuries, but man, he was super talented. So it's a very underrated area, and I've always wondered, why doesn't Notre Dame do better here? I don't know that this commitment is going to change any of that, but it doesn't hurt. Certainly doesn't hurt.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for our commitment show of Khary Adams, a corner from Maryland. And this is an exciting one. And this is one that the staff was excited about, and he didn't set this as a date. And he just said, look, it's time. I'm committing, and we're here to give a show for it. So very excited. Again, it's the second domino to fall from this past weekend's recruiting visits, and who knows which dominoes are next. And but you got to stay locked in to Irish Breakdown if you want to know which domino comes next, and if you want an analysis of that domino. All right, so you're going to have to hit the like button, the subscribe button, the notification bell. You can share with your family and friends, specifically your Penn State friends. Make sure they're aware of everything that's going on right now, because Irish Breakdown will have it for you. So make sure you share it with everybody, because that's what we're here for. All right, you definitely want to check out the boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com for all the intel. And I know your Penn State friends will enjoy that as well. So make sure you stay locked in with us, because this is where it's at, folks, and we'll keep bringing the heat over here at Irish Breakdown.